here is the Chapter 4 review. I'm just going to go over it with you guys. Remember that the first couple pages I already did for you guys. So make sure you go through all of that, and if you have any questions, just let me know. I can actually go through those really quickly, but they're all done, so it's not really beneficial for you to see them not done all the way. Remember, number one, when we have our coordinates, if we're talking about what a function is, our domain or our x values cannot repeat. Cannot repeat. Another thing you guys should know is a most appropriate domain. So remember, depending on what we're talking about, so for the second one, if we're talking about, let's see, for the x value, the number of observed vehicles, remember you can't have decimals or negatives for that, so our answer would be number 4. Slope-intercept form, you always want to make in y equals mx plus b. Remember, m is in front of your x, but only when it is solved for y. Then your b would be your constant. Another way we could do the rate of change, which is the same as the slope, and that would be the change in y over the change in x. So think of your rate questions or speed. So we have hours and what are these? Miles. So miles per hour. So the change in the miles goes on top. Remember, your y is always on the top. To find the y-intercept, that is when x is equal to 0. Okay. You should be able to identify the slope and the y-intercept regardless of if I give you a table or if I give you the graph or if I give you an equation. So like this one right here, you guys had to tell me which one had the same y-intercept. So you can identify the 9, and then you solve each of these in order to find which one has the same. Okay, the different types of slope, we have negative, positive, and then a vertical line. The equation would be an x equals. A horizontal line would be a y equals. So this would be a undefined slope, and this would be the slope of 0. Okay, we have different steps for solving each form of the equation. Remember, this is slope-intercept form, and this is point slope. So if you think about it, they're exactly what they sound like. Okay, the slope-intercept form is when you are given the slope and the y-intercept. The point slope is when you are given a point and a slope. Okay, I also showed you how to find all of the intercepts. Remember, the x-intercept is when y is 0. The y-intercept is when x is 0. Okay, so you can use those in order to graph if you would like. Additionally, we went over some word problems. So remember, whenever you see a word like each or per, that represents the variable that you're going to have to put in there. Okay, so for example, the $50 for this question, that's only an initial value. So it's $50 a month, and then you have to add 10 cents for each megabyte. Okay, so they said B is the additional megabytes. So make sure if they give you a variable, you always want to use the variable that they gave you. So for example, they said C is the total charges, so that's why C is on this side, and then B is what you're multiplying by the 10. Okay, and then lastly, the different ways that you can, the different ways you can graph. If you're using your calculator, you're always going to want to make a table. That's probably the easiest way. You don't have to do this middle column. That's just kind of showing you how you would do it manually without a calculator. But you guys do always have a calculator, so if you just had those two lines, so X out that middle one, that's all that's really necessary, and then plot those points. Additionally, like in 2 and 3, you can put something into y equals mx plus b form, or point slope form gives you a point and the slope. Remember, that's really all you need in order to graph. Okay, and I'll go over that later. And then the last thing, if you're given something in standard form, you can either solve for y and put it in y equals mx plus b, or you can find your x and y intercepts by solving it 2 times. Okay, so let's do some examples. All right, so question number 1. on the part that you guys had to do. First we had to figure out which one is not a function. Whenever I see the word not, I always want to circle or underline that so that I remember to take that into consideration. Okay? That's probably the biggest thing and the biggest mistake that people make, so be careful with that. Alright, so which of the following is not a function? So remember, if it is a function, the x values don't repeat. Okay? And it forces it to me right now. Okay. I'm going to have to do this all by hand, so bear with me. Alright guys, so I do apologize, my tablet is glitching out on me, so I'm going to do this all by hand. So I'll try to keep my hand out of the way for the most part. Okay, so again, what I said before, you always want to circle when they say not. Alright, and then what you're going to want to do, if you're looking for a function, you want to see when you cannot make the vertical line go through. And the reason for that is, remember, for a function, x values can't repeat themselves. Okay, so I want to find the one that's not a function. So this one, if I draw vertical lines, it always only goes through once. So that one works. Okay? Same thing with the next one. No matter where I put a vertical line, it only goes through once. Now here's where it's different. Look at this one. Each of these has some vertical lines in it, so that one's going to be your answer because that doesn't work. Okay? And then this is a linear equation. All linear equations except for an actual vertical line will always be a function. Okay, I'm just going to get a different pen. Alright, so with the next one, we are going to figure out if it is a function, and then we're going to justify it. Okay, so if something is a function, the only thing that is important are the x values. Okay, so what I notice is they are all different. Okay, so my answer is going to be yes. Okay, and you can either write, so the domain values, okay, or I'll say x values, so you have some more vocab, okay, do not repeat. Okay, that is what makes something a function. Alright, on to number 3. So whenever you have a function and it wants to know that function at a certain point, and that says 1/2, and it's kind of blurry, all you're going to do is you're going to substitute that in. So I want f at 1/2, and I want to know what that equals. So I'm going to substitute everywhere I see an x, I'm going to write a 1/2. Okay, and then 6 times 1/2 minus 5. So I want to solve everything that's underneath first. So half of 2, so 2 times 1/2 is 1 plus 3. And then 6 times 1/2 would be 3 minus 5. So I get radical 4 all over -2. Okay, if you solve that, the square root of 4 is 2 over -2. So the answer is -1. And again, all I want to know is I want to know what is 1/2 for this function. So if you wanted to, you could put both these in parentheses and put it in your calculator and check. But 1/2, that's a little tricky to find. So the answer is 1. Okay. Alright, number 4. So we want the function such that 2x minus 5 is defined by the domain 5, or x between 5 and 7. So we want to find the range. Okay, so the range would be the y values. Make sure you know that, the y values. Okay, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to use my equation, my function rather, and I'm going to solve it when x is 5, and then when x is equal to 7. And I'm going to plug it right in. Okay, so 2 times 5 plus 5, so 10 plus 5. So the function at 5 would be 15. So I'm going to cross both of these off. And then for this one, we're going to 2 times 7 5. So I get 14 plus 5, which is 19. So my numbers are 15 and 19. Those are my boundaries. Okay. So that would be your answer. Okay. All right. Next one, identifying slope and point. Slope and y-intercept. Long day. All right, so the first thing I want you guys to remember is y equals mx plus b. M is my slope, and b is my y-intercept. Okay, very important. So we're going to put all of these in y equals mx plus b, or slope-intercept form. Okay, that's what this is called, slope-intercept form. And then we'll identify our m and our b. Now the first one is already in y equals mx plus b, so we're going to say -1 and +3. Okay, if there's nothing in front of x, then it's just a 1. So that'd be a -1. Okay, so y equals -1 x plus 3, if that is easier for you to look at that way. Okay, the next one is not in y-intercept form, slope-intercept form. Can't talk right. Okay, so I'm going to add 7 to get y by itself. So y is equal to -4x plus 7. Remember, I can do that because it's an equation, so it doesn't matter. So I added the 7 over to this side with the -4. Okay, so m is equal to -4 because it's right there. And then b would be 7. All right, so if you think of this as y equals mx plus b, the only way to get rid of the x would be if your slope is 0, because anything multiplied by 0 would get rid of it. All right, and then that would only leave this to be the b value, so this would be -2. Okay, and lastly, okay, remember when we did those literal equations, how I told you to circle the thing that we want to get by itself? So we're going to subtract 2x first. So I get 4y is equal to -2x plus 24. Go ahead and divide everything by 4. So y is equal to, please don't leave it as -2/4, please simplify it. So it would be -1/2 plus x plus 6. So my slope is -1/2, and my y-intercept is going to be 6. Okay? Make sure you can do that for the test. All right, the next thing, I want you guys to remember Mr. Slope guy. So remember, these were like his rosy cheeks. So this is a 0. Okay, if it starts low and goes high, that's a positive slope. And think about it, it's going up, right? So that's positive, and then going to the right, which is also positive. Okay, and this one is going down and positive, so that's going to be a negative. Remember, when they are going high and then low, that's going to be a negative slope. And then remember, this is the slope guy's nose. We drew a little U under it. So this would be undefined, or we also call it no slope. Undefined or no slope. All right. This question is almost identical to the test, I think. Okay, so if I give you a table, remember the slope we can think of as the change in y over the change in x. Okay? So in order to do that, remember, change is like a difference. So I want to go from here and see, remember we drew these little arrows? This is where this would come in handy. Okay? So if I'm going from -2 to 0, I'm adding 2. Adding 2, adding 2. If I'm going from -4 to -1, I'm adding 3, adding 3, adding 3. So if I substitute this into my, so m equals the change in y over the change in x, that would be 3/2. The other thing you could do is you can pick 2 points, if you'd like, all right, and put them into this slope formula. So remember, y1 minus y2 all over, x2 minus x1, and then x2, okay. All right, so if you're going to do that, then m is equal to, so we do 5 minus negative 4 all over 4 minus negative 2. So I'd get positive 9 over 6, which simplifies to 3 over 2. Okay, so either way you would get 3 over 2. All right, the y-intercept, remember that is when x equals 0. Okay, well x equals 0 at negative 1. So b equals negative 1. All right, and then let's put it all together. So y equals mx plus b. So y is equal to 3 halves x minus 1. Now it didn't say you had to put it in slope-intercept form, so if you wanted to put it in point-slope form, you do have both of those. I would hope, though, that if you found the slope and the y-intercept, that you would put it in slope-intercept form. Okay. All right. Number 14, we are calculating the slope. So again, m is equal to y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. Okay, x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay, so that would be 6 minus 4. And then negative 10 minus negative 5. So 6 minus 4 is 2. And then negative 10, this would change to a positive, so this would be negative 5. So m is equal to negative 2 fifths. Okay? All right, for the next one, remember this is point-slope form. Okay, and point-slope form is y minus y1 equal to m, and then x minus x1. Okay, where this is the slope. Right? So if we look at this equation, 4 would be our slope. So m is equal to 4. Now, if some of you did not think to do that, what you can do instead is use what you know. You know y equals mx plus b. Pretty confident you guys all know that. So if you want to rewrite this, remember you can always convert. Okay, so y minus 5 is equal to 4x minus 8. Add 5 to both sides. Negative 3. Okay, so either way, you would get m equals 4. Doesn't matter to me which way you use. All right, 16, we want slope-intercept form. Every time I see that they want a specific one, I always circle it to make sure we do it that way. So write the equation of a line with a slope 6. So m equals 6, and it passes through the point 214. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use y equals mx plus b. If you want to do what we did up here, you can put it into slope form and then solve for y. I'm going to do it this way so you guys have another example. So remember my xy for this would be 214. So that's what I'm going to solve, and then I'm going to solve for b. Doesn't really look like a b. Oh, you guys know what I mean. Okay, so x and y. So 14 is equal to 6 times 2 plus b. So if we multiply, we get 12, and then subtract 12. So b equals 2. Okay, so I have my slope and my y-intercept. So y equals 6x plus 2. All right, now I see it says point-slope form. So real quick, I'm going to write y minus y1 equals m and x minus x1. Okay, so there are two answers for this, depending on which one you use. All right, so again, either of these are correct answers. So for the first one, I would say y minus 5 is equal to, oh, I gotta find the slope first. Okay, let's find the slope first. So m is equal to 9 minus 5 all over 3 minus 1. So 4 over 2, which is 2. So m is equal to 2. Okay, did I do that right? 9 minus 5, 3 minus 1. Good. Okay, so 2, and then x minus 1. So there's one answer. Or, okay, so again, you don't have to do both, one or the other. Y minus 9 is equal to 2, and then x minus 3. Okay, home stretch. Sorry, I know it's a very long video, but remember it will be very beneficial at the end of the year. Alright, so the next one. Does the point 2, 1 satisfy the equation? So the easiest way for me would be to justify it. So I'm going to substitute in. So 1, oh, losing my mind. Alright, so 1 minus 4 is equal to negative 2 times 2. So 1 minus 4 gets me negative 3. Those are not equal to each other. Okay, so no, this does, this point does not satisfy the equation. So this is justification. You just have to make sure that you write down your reason as well. All right, keep going. So now we're graphing. So I'm going to show you a couple different ways. I'll show you in your calculator as well. So the first thing you guys want to do is solve for y. Alright, so this equals 1/2 x plus 4. So I'm going to show you in your calculator because I think most of you will do it in your calculator. Okay. Okay, so if we do this in our calculator, you can either do 1 divided by 2 like this, or change it to 0.5 x plus 4. I don't care about the graph right now, I just care about the table. So second function, table. And then you want to get a good number of them on there. Okay, so I'm going to start at -6, and I'm going to skip every other one and go probably to, maybe I'll start lower. I'll start at -8. Okay, so I'm going to get -8, 0, -6, 1, -4, 2. Oh, let me start graphing those. Okay, so I went all the way up to 0, 4. And then you guys can connect your point. Okay, so connect your points, and then make sure you always write your equation. I always write my original. You can write the one that you solved for, but I usually write the original. Okay, minimum you need is 2 points. But remember, whenever you are doing it yourself. Also, if you wanted to, you could have done m is equal to 1/2. So that means up 1 over 2. And then b is 4. So it does not matter to me which way you do it. I'll graph the other one like that. Okay, for number 20, if you wanted to, you could plug each of these in, and I'll show you this in just a second. But what you can do is you can plug it in to, let me just show you. You can plug it in for your x and y intercepts, like I did here. Sorry, that looks awful. Okay, so if you wanted to, and this is a y, if you wanted to to get 2 points, remember that's all you need, a minimum of 2 points, is first I found my x-intercept, and then I found my y-intercept to find those 2 points. So remember, your x-intercept is when y is equal to 0, and your y-intercept is when x is equal to 0. So you can get those 2 points and plot it, or if you wanted to, you can solve for y, which I think most of you would do, and then you can either put it into your calculator and graph it that way, or you can use you could go to 0, 4, and then you could go down over 2, down over 2. I'm sorry. So I want to also mention that you can either go up and to the right, or remember you can go down and to the left. Okay, so this would be positive, positive. This is negative, negative, which equals a positive. Okay, and the last couple questions. Number 21, you had to write an equation. All right. So it says it costs $300 to join the gym. So this is an initial cost. So one time only. All right, and then it's $15 per month. So they said to write the function f of x. So for my function, it's f of x is equal to 15x plus 350. If you wrote the 350 first, that's fine. All right, so there would be 1 point. Now it says to use the function to find after 3 months. So then I'm going to substitute in a 3 and solve that way. So 15 times 3 is 45, which equals $395. So Elena's cost is $395. Okay, make sure you always write a last sentence. Okay, 2 more, then you're done. Okay, to write an equation, the easiest thing I would say is to do y equals mx plus b. So the first thing, let's figure out what b equals. So if I look on here, go up 1, 2. So b is equal to 2. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to find another point. So this looks like a point right here. And I'm going to count to it. Okay, so I can go down, so minus 1, and then over 1, 2, 3. So plus 3. So remember, for your slope is the change in y over the change in x. Oh, I don't know why I said 3. That's definitely only 2. 1, 2. Okay, probably because I drew the arrow right here. I should have drew right here. Okay, so I'm going down 1 and then over 2. If you look at the next one, I'm also going down 1, excuse me, and over 2 more as well. All right, so if I put that in, so I get negative 1 over 2, that would be my slope. So lastly, you would just substitute into this equation for your general statement. General equation, you would get negative 1/2 x plus 2. That would be your equation. All right, and lastly, we want to know which one of these represents a linear relationship. So a linear relationship is one that whatever is happening on the x's needs to be constant, and then whatever's happening on the y's. So notice they're not asking you which one's a function. Okay, they're actually all functions because none of the x's repeat. They're asking you, so let's look at this. So as this goes up by 1, so plus 1, plus 1, plus 1, we have plus 1, plus 1, plus 5, and plus 7. So that one does not work. For this one, okay, we're going up by 1, up by 1, up by 1. Okay, that's constant. But if you notice on the other side, this is going up by 1/2. This goes up by 1. This goes up by 4. So this is actually a different one that we'll talk about. Or no, that's up by 6. And then this is up by 4. Oh my gosh, I literally can't count. That's up by 2. Okay, so 2 does not work. Alright, so again, up 1, up 1, up 1. And then this one, up by 2. up by 2. Looking good, looking good. Okay, so this one does have a slope as constant. Alright, so this would be linear. So 3 is actually your answer. Okay, so if you guys have any more questions, you can just send me an email, text me on Remind, and I'll answer you right away. But remember, our test is tomorrow, so please make sure that you ask me any questions before.